What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one armed madman, and with me today we've got Carl Tolbert. Carl, we had some technical difficulties, but I think we're good to go now. How we doing today?
Really well, thanks. I so appreciate being on the show with you. I'm really excited.
Excellent, yeah, man. We're gonna talk a little bit about specialization today. I do believe.
Yeah, in 2021, I started writing a book um, about being a specialist. And what a specialist is you've heard the thing. If you go to a store, somebody like think about True Value, right? That somebody's going to come around and help you out, and they know what they're doing, right? So pretty much everything in the industrial space is kind of like that too, right? So if I have a plant, I need help because of a bearing failed. There's distributors, there's brands, then all of these people have subject matter experts and application engineers and specialists, right? So I've been one of those. I've been a specialist primarily in drives and motors for my entire adult life. And so I wrote a book about it. And it's called The 10 Immutable Laws. And the journey was fascinating. I finished my doctorate in 22 in organizational behavior. So a lot of my research went into this book. So it's not just anecdotal or my experience, but that certainly helped. And it releases December 1st, and I'm excited to share it with a lot of people because it's a shortcut for a lot of folks wanting to get into that business, kind of job.
Yeah, man. I've the two jobs I've worked the most in my adult life have been specialized positions. I was a bartender for quite a while, and then I got into electrical line work. And
Hmm.
sorry, my dog's going freaking crazy right now, but he's going out back. Uh, you know, specialization is what has built human society, back before we had civilization, everybody was a hunter gatherer. The women stayed back at the teepee and kind of prepared the food and
Yep.
took care of the kids, and the men went out and hunted and fished and gathered and whatever else they were doing. But everybody kind of did the same thing. And then we got to a point where it was like, okay, well, you're better at making baskets. So you're going to make baskets during the day. And I have, better eyes than you, and I'm a better shot than you. So I'm going to be out hunting where you, don't have the whatever fear center in your brain or something like that. So you're going to be on guard all day, and it was
Right.
a way for us to beco transfer from generalists to specialists, and it gave
Yep.
people more free time, it gave the division of labor, and it allowed us to move into, like, a almost a not right away, but at some point, a private property society where everybody was responsible for their job and the products and labor that went into them, and we were able to kind of trade and build
Hmm.
civilization off of it. And I think very few people are aware of, like, how important specialization is. Like, it's either a book or a saying or something, but I've heard it, over and over before, but it's like there's no single person on the planet that can build a toaster. You've got
Yeah.
every
Yeah, I've
part of
heard
that
that.
toaster is, you've got materials that are sourced from somewhere, and then they're transported to another place by different
Hmm.
specialists. And then, you're making coils in one place, you're making the electrical components in the other, you're making the shell somewhere else. And then finally it all gets put together in a factory and gets sent out. And, when you start looking at every part of that toaster,
Hmm.
there's a lot of different labor divisions going into that thing. It's not just, hey, I'm going to send aluminum, steel, and plastic to a shop, and they're going to put this thing all together and make it work. Like, there's a whole supply chain, there's a whole,
Right.
transportation chain, and there's a whole, like, specialization chain that goes into this thing before it finally makes it onto your counter so you can make toast in the morning.
Right. For sure. Yeah. Well, so I two things that stood out through the process. The first thing was that experience trumps all education. Right. So what happens is people assume that you have to have an engineering degree or if that's the kind of people you want to hire with
Yeah.
advanced education. And that's actually completely backwards. The people who are the most successful people come from doing the job in the first place. So you get the third shift maintenance supervisor to come work for you to help other people because they speak the language. They've been doing it all their life and they may have just finished high school. It just doesn't matter. I think that's shocking to a lot of folks because everybody's pushing degrees, engineering degrees, and et
Yep.
cetera. And I think that the people that are engineers are what we call unicorns. You know, they have the engineering degree and the experience and the knowledge, and those folks are really hard to find, especially now as we all get older. And it's just a going back to the folks working in the field is that's where you kind of have to kind of cultivate the specialists as everybody ages out and retires. So that's a was a huge finding, actually.
Yeah, they want education to be the backbone of every job.
Mhm.
If you didn't go to school for this and learn about it, then you're not
Yeah,
capable of doing it essentially. And like bartending especially, like there's, in every major city in the country there's probably a bartending school.
right.
And very few of the people at that school have ever even worked in a restaurant or a bar, let alone like had any experience whatsoever, like making a drink or talking to a customer.
Right.
And, these people would go out and spend a bunch of money going to this school thinking that they were going to be able to walk right into a job. And it just didn't happen because they didn't have the experience.
Mhm.
Like you said, like the experience of actually working at a bar. And I think it goes even further. Like we always had a problem at the bars that I worked at that you didn't have enough people working. We never had enough people. We were always short on labor, we were short on employees, and we were always hiring new bartenders, especially at the last bar that I worked at. It was every couple of months we had to hire a new bartender or two. One of them would quit or get fired because they were addicted to drugs or
Right.
just bad at their job or whatever it was. And I was just so sick of training these idiots that had so many bad habits because they'd been working as a bartender, a career bartender essentially for 5, 10, 15, even more 20, 30 years essentially. And they had just all of these bad habits where,
Right.
they refused to do things the way it needed to be done at the specific bar that you were working in. And I was
Mhm.
constantly telling the boss, like, hey, we need to promote from within and stop hiring these outside bartenders that, yeah, they've
Right.
got experience, but they've also got bad habits. And like when it comes to working behind a bar, the main thing that you need to learn is putting in orders in the computer. Where does everything go? What is the
Mhm.
drink menu at this bar? Because every bar has a different drink menu. They've got a different way to make,
Right.
the same drink that you've made 100 times at different bars, but there's a different way to make it here than it was there. So there's a learning process to it, and I think it's easier to teach a waitress, server, excuse me, don't wanna get yelled at by any
So
of my
it's
old
not all like
coworkers
Tom
today.
Cruise and Cocktail?
No, and, for me, it was like, I can teach somebody who knows our system how to bartend here in a couple of days. Like, give me a
Right.
couple days with them, and they're gonna be good to go. You give me somebody who's been working in the field for a long time, and they're gonna have a ton of bad habits that we're gonna have to break. They're not gonna wanna do things our way. They're gonna say, "Well, I did it over this way over here, and we should do it that way over there," and it's like, "Yeah, well, you've been working here for 2 days, so maybe don't tell us how to, make our system work." There's a place for that. There is a place for somebody who comes in and wants to do things your way and says, "Hey, look, we could do things, like this instead of like that, and it would help with productivity. It would help with A, B, and C." And you could look at that and go, "Yeah, that makes sense. We could try it." Or you could say, "No, we're not doing that here because, you haven't been here long enough to realize that this is the way things go," essentially.
Right. Right. I was just thinking, I design a lot of systems, weird projects and stuff, and one of the odder ones, I was in Georgia for many, many years, and, Zach Brown, the famous,
Yeah.
singer, I had to quote this system, we never built it, but he wanted a merry-go-round of, beer kegs. probably for a video, I don't know, or
Yeah.
some kind of thing, but I end up having to, sketch it out on paper and then quote the drive system and how it's gonna rotate and actually get him a quote for his system because it was, I think he had an office in Sequoia, which was where they filmed, the, uh, the Living Dead show. You know, I
Yeah.
can't remember the name, it was on TV forever, you know, with The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they filmed it all in Georgia in this little town, and his office was in that town. And I just remember quoting this outrageous system, and it was beer kegs as a merry-go-round.
Yeah.
It's not the oddest thing I've ever built. You know, one of the things being a specialist, you know, I have to laugh is that I'm actually a designer. I design machinery. And I've worked on the mechanical bulls at Gillies. I've done exhibits at Ripley's, believe it or not, the Cleveland Public Zoo, all these places that are just really interesting and odd applications. The wagon wheels on Oklahoma on Broadway. You know, it's all, you know, the irony is that's all the fun stuff, but it's the same equipment you use in industrial plants making, you know, baking cookies or making
Yeah.
plastic, you know?
Yeah. One of the problems I ran into all the time working was especially in bartending, you know. The
Mhm.
last bar that I worked in, the guy that owned the bar, he had 0 experience. He never worked in a bar, he never worked in a restaurant. He just decided he was gonna open one day, and then, I go to a lot of restaurants, so I know how things are supposed to run, and I know how things are supposed to go, and it
Yeah.
was just always a fight with him to see things from our way, like, "Hey, look, we're the ones down here in the trenches doing the job, like, you need to kind of see things." And he didn't even he came in maybe once a week for a couple hours, sat in his office, never worked out,
Yeah.
on the floor, talked to customers, none of that stuff. He just
Huh.
sat in his office and made decisions from his throne essentially, and,
Well,
you
you
know
know, that's odd. You know, the thing is about the restaurant business, it's very low profit. You know,
Yeah.
it's very, very tight. I remember I was in class with a few CPAs and you know, we got chatting about where's the profit lie in organizational, you know, in businesses.
Mhm.
And you know, a lot of the restaurants are so low margin. And it's got to be the same thing for bars. The only
Yep,
difference is maybe the markup on the alcohol and the
yep.
sodas. But
That's where you make your money is alcohol and soda, essentially, like,
yeah,
there's not a ton of money in food. It's
yeah,
like you said, the margins are super, super low. And,
yeah.
this guy, he'd go on vacation to Hawaii all the time, which is how I ended up getting the job there was that I had bartended at in Maui for, like, a year, and he was, cool with that, but he had pets and, I was his pet for a couple weeks and then he decided he hated me and didn't want to
Yeah.
listen to my input anymore. And, he would go to Maui and hang out and go to these restaurants and then come back with some crazy idea that he saw at some restaurant that he went to. And, one of the things that I was always constantly fighting with him about was at one day he just up and decided that everybody in the restaurant is gonna wear white shirts from now on,
Oh,
white
wow.
collared shirts. And this is a sports bar. It's a high volume sports bar. And, I'm messing with grenadine
Mhm.
and blue carousel all day. And like you're already having a problem with too much employee turnover. And now you're forcing us to wear a white shirt while we're flinging, bright colored booze around all over the damn place. And you're
Right,
not compensating us for, buying shirts. Like I could see if you had one of these companies that comes in and
right,
you wear your shirt during the day, you put it in the closet at night. Some company comes in at the end of the week, takes them, washes them. When they're beyond repair, they bring out new ones. Like, fine, whatever, if you want to do that. But at this point, like, I'm having to buy these damn things and I'm going through two or three of them a month. And
right.
you're already having a problem with turnover. And like, the entire point of them was image, I guess. And it's like, hey,
Mhm.
would you rather have somebody with a dirty white shirt that's, trying to, push this thing beyond its operational use for as long as they possibly can? And have a stain on it from earlier in the day, or would you just want us to wear black? And, you know, the customers aren't gonna notice. They don't care what color shirt we're wearing. It has,
Right.
especially in a sports bar, like, give us some sort of, like, jersey looking thing, like, make it cool. I remember bringing in my shirt from the bar that I worked at in Maui. I'm like, "Look at this is a cool shirt." Like, people used to try and buy these things off my back. Like, let's move to something like this. It'll make us happy. We're gonna have to not gonna have to spend as much money, and the customers aren't gonna notice the difference. They're here for an hour or 2 at a time. Do you really think they're gonna sit at their table and go, "Huh, those white shirts look really nice," or are they more concerned with what they're going to be doing in San Francisco for the next, day or week or however long they're here? Are they gonna be concerned about the shirt, or are they gonna be looking out the window at Alcatraz and the bay and talking about, things that used to happen at Alcatraz and Al Capone and all the stuff? Like, he just never seemed to get it, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're still wearing white shirts there.
Was Hawaii the one of the cooler places that you bartended, or
Yeah.
did you,
Yeah, not a ton of places. I was Southern California, Maui, and San Francisco.
okay. Wow. Yeah, it'd be kinda different. Um, when I was in the Navy, I've been to all those places,
Yeah,
but, it was so quite different life, different age, different than now, of course, but, that'd be kinda cool, you know? Um, yeah, but Hawaii was different. I mean, in the military, it's a very expensive place,
yeah,
and then, you don't make anything in the military, so you don't try to really do the touristy things because you just don't have the money for it.
yeah.
And you're not quite a local, so you're kind of in this weird thing, you know?
Yeah. I found that it was set up for people to work there temporarily and not so much live there for the rest of their life. Like, you can
Yeah.
rent a room at somebody else's house for relatively cheap, and if you know the right places to shop and if you work at a restaurant, like, you can get deals on food and you can live there for, you know, it's still gonna be more expensive than California or
Mhm.
Idaho where I live now, but not, like, outrageously. But as soon as you decide, "Okay, I wanna spend the rest of my life here," the jump from, like, living in somebody's house and renting a room and working a menial job to, like, "I'm gonna own a house," is just massive, massive, and there's, like, very, very few jobs that allow you to take that jump, and most of those jobs go to college grads from outside of the state, and
Yeah,
it's
for
one of these
sure.
things where, like, even the locals are all living together with their families. They're sharing these houses that have been in their families for generations because, they don't have the experience or the money to go into, like, they can get jobs working for utilities and stuff like that, but as far as, like, the high paying jobs on the islands, those are going to white people from different states.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I guess if you're in finance or those kind
Yeah,
of jobs or, totally. I think in the industrial world, it's a little different. It's still more of the, blue collar forward kind of thing,
yeah,
But, yeah, I remember, running into a guy at Key West. I love Key West. I've been there several times, and, that's what he did. It's the same idea. You can't really own a house. It's so expensive. And my wife and I were there a few years ago in this place where we used to snorkel, which was called Tank Island. It's like this really rundown area, and it was a lot of fun. We'd snorkel off of it. Well, it was sold, the Navy sold it to a bunch of investors. Now it's Sunset Keys with $1,000,000 houses on it.
yeah,
It's just so different than, I mean, the Sloppy Joes and all the other bars. I don't know if you've ever been to Key West, but
yeah,
they're still all there, but it's just, it's like Hawaii.
yeah,
It's very touristy, very, very fun, but, the people that live there, it's what it is. It's service jobs, you rent a room.
yeah.
That's what this guy was doing as well. It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
Uh,
I grew up in Northern California, and, I was working as, like, an apprentice lineman when I got hurt, and uh, the company I worked for was based out of Boise, Idaho area,
mhm,
and we were working in North Dakota, so they would fly us in and out every couple of couple of weeks, and,
mhm,
I ended up, like, renting an apartment here in Boise, and then I got hurt, I was making like six figures bartending in San Francisco, and then I decided to go to line school and get, a more permanent job that had benefits and all that kind of stuff. And I took a massive pay cut going to the
Yeah.
company that I worked for in North Dakota. And kind of the plan was, because I was older when I got into it, I was 29, where a lot of the guys were younger and straight out of the military, and some of them had experience. So
Right.
they were able to get the good jobs, where kind of the rest of the pack was kind of relegated to terrible parts of the country, middle of nowhere, Texas, North Dakota, some, other places. And I got hurt on like 14 bucks an hour or something like that. And essentially, like, there was no staying in California at that point because, the prices were already out of control there. It was being overran by people who wanted to live in wine country and were coming
Mhm.
from all over the world or all over the country. And, I had to essentially move up here, and, luckily I bought a house, and this was in 2015, so it was before COVID prices, kicked in and put real estate, like, just out of control. And, one of the things I realized later on is, like, I started renting rooms, and I realized, like, man, the people that I'm renting rooms to that are from this area are in the same position that I was put in into Northern California, where
Right.
outsiders are coming in, they're buying up all the real estate, and they're making it harder and harder for the locals to, like,
Yeah.
live in the town or the state that they grew up in. And, I was pretty bitter about it in the beginning because, at that point, like, I felt like I was getting kicked out of my home essentially. And, I was for the most part. And now I look back and it was like I got out at the right time. Things
Right.
kind of started going to shit there soon after that. And, like, a lot of the people that told me not to move up here are now living here. So it's, ended up being for the best. But I do feel for the people that, like, I have displaced, in a lot of ways. It's not just me, it's, a bunch of people from California that are doing it. But,
Right.
prices are up, and it's harder and harder for the people that grew up here to, like, build a life here.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, it's well, my we were in Georgia for 20 some years, and then we decided to move back to the Midwest, and that's how we got to Sioux Falls, and and it's I'm sure if you're working in North Dakota, probably was it Williamston, or
Williston.
there's a yeah, they're all the oil country
Yeah.
up there in northern North
Yep.
Dakota is
That's where I
so.
was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I haven't been up there yet. Farthest north I've been now is Grand Forks, which is
Don't
where the university
don't
is.
go
It's
up
straight
there.
north.
It's a
Yeah.
shithole. It's just a terrible place. It's awful. To and one of the craziest things is, like, I've never sat in more traffic in my life than I did in North Dakota, which makes no sense. But when you
Oh, it's
start look,
probably, yeah, probably right during the boom of the fracking and
yeah,
all that,
I
right?
was right there during the boom. None of the
Yep.
infrastructure was set up for the amount of
Yeah.
people that were living there, so all the roads were like,
Right.
two-lane highways and county
Hmm.
roads, and, like, it was just impossible to, sustain all the people that were living there. And, like, I lived
Right.
in, Watford City, which is a little bit south of Wilson. Maybe it's south, maybe it's north.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It doesn't matter. It's all
Right.
the same. Like, there's just nothing up there. It's dead
Yeah.
flat. Like, you can never tell where the hell you are. Like,
Yep.
funny story, we were working out in the field, you know, one day in the wintertime, and you're up so far north that, like, in the winter the sun kind of just does circles. It doesn't really go up and,
Yep.
straight up and down on you. And we got done with this job, and it was a miserable day. It was so cold. It was like -40 or something like that. It's just a miserable day, and we had to put this solar panel up on the pole, and we didn't have cell service, we didn't have a compass, and we're trying to figure out which direction south is so we can mount this solar panel in the right spot. And we're like, we're doing fingers up with the sun. Okay, well, 15 minutes, it's going to be down here. And, we're all arguing about which direction south is. And turned out we all got it wrong. And we had to drive out
Right.
there the next day and fix it anyways. So tell me some more about the book. What are some of, like, the key tenets to it? What are some of the subjects that you tackle? Tell me a little bit more.
Well, so I went through one, but about the
Yeah.
education, experience trumps education. One of the other things I found was knowledge has a half life. One of the things is if you're a specialist and you're working in that expertise type job, you've got to keep sharpening the saw. I mean, it seems obvious, but there was a lot of people I'd interviewed that just felt since they were the established expert that they were done.
Yeah.
And it's just that's really one of the challenges because as we're seeing with AI, because I have a whole chapter on AI, um, and I do a lot of research outside of this book with regard to AI, specifically with blame and accountability and ethics and stuff. And um, AI is changing so much stuff that the experts who, hey, I'm really good at this, but then if you don't know about how AI is influencing it now, how the calculations are
Yeah.
different or how people are using it rightly or wrongly, well, then all of a sudden you're in that weaker position. You have a real chink in your armor, so to speak. And I think that's really a challenge is staying up to date with technology that I get accused a lot of being a collector because I have lots of degrees and certifications and everything, but it's in my DNA to keep learning every day from people, people like you, other people I interview. I talk to a lot of folks.
Yeah.
It's again, qualitative research is part of my thing, and it's just fascinating. So it's about the half life of the knowledge, the AI component. One of the other things is the culture of organizations. That's really probably one of the biggest reasons why people come and go. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this as well. You have an organization like you're talking about with the owner of that restaurant. The culture matters so much in
Yeah.
retention because at some point, you get paid enough money where okay, well, I'm getting by. It's okay. Then what's left is mastery and independence, but the culture that lets you do that. Right, the leadership that
Yep.
communicates to you, that you have, an ability to kinda make some decisions, even small ones. I think culture is lacking a lot for some of the newer leaders, they just don't quite get it. I think that came out of the book as well, during through the research.
Yeah. I was always having to learn new stuff in both positions. Like I was apprentice as a lineman, so my job was to learn at that point.
Right.
But even like as a journeyman, they're always coming out with new tools and new procedures and new OSHA regulations. So it's kind of your job to,
Yep.
learn about what the new stuff is and how to do it the right way. And in bartending, there's always new drinks coming out. What are the popular alcohols that are, new
Mhm.
alcohols that are coming out, like new beers, like you're always having to stay up on different things. And, you
Yeah.
know, one of the one of the things that I always appreciated about line work was, like, I remember somebody told me in line schools, like, as an apprentice, you learn. Like, that's your whole job is to learn and absorb as much information as you possibly can, because as soon as you become a journeyman, now you're a teacher. Your whole job is not to get all the work done and work your ass off and just hammer down and not pay attention to what's going on. Like, your job is to teach at that point, and a major part of teaching is still learning and
Right.
evolving. Maybe evolving is a better word for it, because you're constantly dealing with having new things thrown at you.
Well well the famous physicist Richard Feynman,
Yeah.
he always talked about the greatest way to learn something was to teach it.
Yep.
Right, and I subscribe to that significantly
Yep.
because I
I do
think
too.
that yeah, because it is a game changer. Because what happens is if you're new at mentoring, often you're not used to that already. You're not used to the notion of, "Okay, so maybe I don't know as well as I should," but as you teach it, it also solidifies your ability to become an expert,
Yeah.
right?
I
So
worked with this lineman in North Dakota. He was kind of like the crew, you know, foreman that I worked for, and in the beginning we did not get along. It was, you know, he was impatient and not really willing to like explain things essentially. And I remember, like, one day, finally, like, I just had enough was enough, and, like, one of the things, like, I went to line school and they teach you, like, this is what this part is called. This is what this, thing is called. And they even told us in school, like, everybody's going to call it a different thing. So, like, we're teaching you that it's called this, but if you go and work in North Dakota, they might call it something completely different. So you're going to have to, like, be aware of that and remember new terms and new names for the same part, which is
Mhm.
ridiculous, but that's how it is. And one day he sent me out, we're at the yard picking up parts and, equipment for the job that we're doing. And he sent me out to grab some stuff. And like, I come back and I'm like, what is that essentially? You know what I mean? And he kind of lost it. You don't know what you're doing and blah 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 blah. And finally I was just like, dude, I would love to put you behind a bar for one day and just rip you for not knowing what this drink is or what that drink is or how come you can't figure out the computer system right away? Like, what is wrong with you, you fucking moron? Type of thing. And I saw something in his brain kinda click like, "Oh, like, maybe I'm not doing this the right way." You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah.
we ended up getting along really well after that, and I enjoyed working with him. And one of the things that, like, I appreciated about him that the other foreman that I worked for didn't do was, like, the other foreman was concentrated on getting as much work done as he possibly could. He wasn't really
Mhm.
looking to explain anything to you, he was just trying to get work done. And the other guy was a little bit slower. He was kind
Yeah.
of pudgy, so he couldn't move as fast and wasn't just as fast as the lineman as the other guy was. And we started doing this thing where I really appreciated it because it helped me learn as we would come out to the job site first thing in the morning and he'd go, okay, because I would ask him, like, what are we doing today and why, essentially. So then it
Mhm.
would, morphed into him asking me, okay, what are we doing today and why? And I'd kind of think about it and go, I'd think about it the night before because I'm always somebody that I want to know the big picture. I want to understand the entire job that we're doing, why we're doing it this way. Like that's just the way I am. Like I kind of have, the drive to learn something
Mhm.
rather than just go through the motions and collect my paycheck with which a lot of the guys that I worked with, that was what they were concerned with. Tell me what to do today, I'll do it, then I'll go back to the yard at night, drink myself to
Right.
sleep, and call it a day and do it again the next day. So anyways, he would ask me like, "What are we doing today and why?" And I would say, "Okay, we're gonna do A, B, and C." And okay, why are we doing that? Well, if we did it like this, it would, end up, but if we do it this way, that'll set us up to do something more. Okay, so how are we going to do that? And I go, okay, well, we should, hang a pulley here and yank wire over here. And okay, that would work. But what if we did it this way, and go
Right.
through it and then
Right.
something would click. Oh, I didn't see that. You know what I mean? And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like that meme, you know what I mean?
That's right.
And,
That's right.
it helped me immensely, like, learn the actual process rather than just the day to day.
Mhm. Right. Oh, man. Well, learning stuff's so unique, anyway. I mean, especially electrical work,
Yeah.
because you can't see it unless it's really bad. I mean, it's one thing that if you're a mechanic, you can actually look at something and say, "All right, well, that's potentially bad," but electricity in general is just so magical, the
Oh,
the whole
that's one of the
idea.
things that they say about electricity is FM, which means fucking magic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, very, very. I think the P is in there, pure. I think that was the Navy term, PFM.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I mean it's been kind of a journey. So the other research I've done in conjunction with the book is there's a psychological thing called grit, which is effort and like resilience, perseverance,
Mhm.
and a lot of the engineers and maintenance folks said I did like 500 surveys and they have like 14% more grit than the normal worker. But what I found was that the newer leaders that within the first year that they go down to like 2.8 from 4.14. So it's a huge drop. And part of it is burning out. They get burned out.
Yeah.
They're still, their interest goes away, but the resilience is still up. So they're persevering. but a lot of that goes back to the culture question, right? So a lot of people are wondering why, they can't keep maintenance groups,
Yeah.
right? So if I have a manufacturing plant or like even electricians, why do you have such a high turnover, right? In these some of these fields, because it's really hard to keep people, it's hard to attract people. And the people going into it or have the right personality. Otherwise you wouldn't even be there. But the problem is that the groups leading them is so problematic, and that's really what hurts folks. And it's so this research, it's in peer review, which is the academic evaluation for publication. um Again, that research is going to be unique to itself, and I can't wait to get it out to the public. And it's not a book right now, but it may eventually become my second book, which is going to be about the retention and maintenance cultures
Yeah.
that most plants have. I think that's going to be a huge bit of information for a lot of folks.
So the last bar that I worked in San Francisco, I was coming off of a nasty drug addiction and just
Mhm,
kind of like wasted my life away for the majority of my 20s. And I
mhm,
finally got clean and started working in this bar, and I was just working as much as I possibly could. I picked
yeah,
up as many shifts as I could. I stayed late, worked as much overtime as they would let me, just trying to like make some money and make
right,
up for lost time essentially.
right,
And I think the 3rd or 4th year that I worked there, it was a newer bar when I started working there. They were only a couple years into operation, and they were having problems with retention and, keeping the staff full essentially. Like, we would lose a lot of bartenders, a lot of waitresses, and excuse me, servers. Again, I did it again. Anyways, I was always against cutting my hours down. I wanted to work as many hours as I possibly could. And the boss, once we kind of had enough staffing, they kind of wanted to cut us down to like 4 days a week, 4 shifts a week. And I fought this tooth and nail. It was just,
mm,
nope, I'm not gonna do it. I need the money. Like, I'm gonna spend 30 grand on line school. Like, I need the money. I'm not going down to 4 days a week. If you kick me down to 4 days a week, I'm gonna go get a second job and I'm only gonna work here a couple of days a week. Like, it's just not gonna
right,
happen. And finally, like, I ended up like meeting my ex-wife and we started like doing more things. And the last like year that I worked there, I started trading away one of my shifts a week for,
mhm,
I did this for a little bit here and a little bit there. And then finally, one day my boss came to me and was like, "Hey man, you've traded away your fifth shift like for the last 2 months. Like, can we just cut you down to 4 days a week?" And I was like, "Well, I guess we can try it. Like, I kind of enjoy having this extra day and like I'm making plenty of money at this point, and like, I guess it's worth a try. Like, I feel better during the day. And it turned out that I made more money that year than any other year that I worked there. And it was because I wasn't so burnt out. Like, working five,
mhm,
10s or 11s or 12s, like,
right, right,
really wore me out. And as a bartender, you decide how much money you're going to make on the day. It has nothing to do with the customers that come in. It can have something to do with how busy the bar is, but essentially, like, your attitude determines how much money you're gonna make.
right,
And for me, I was in a better mood, I was more chipper, I wasn't nearly as burned out with that extra day off, and it equated to me making more money, and that was something that I wasn't expecting. And I think that, like, I was always against like a 4-day work week. I'd hear these people, complaining and wanting a 4-day work, and it's like, you're just communists. Like, you wanna do less work for more money, and, like, it's just ridiculous and blah, blah,
right,
blah, going down that route. But after, like, experiencing it myself, it's like, maybe there are some jobs where 4 days a week would be viable, and maybe if your people are getting more done if you
mhm,
give them an extra day off a week, you can afford to pay them more because you're not gonna pay them, as much overtime, or they're not gonna be, I don't know. I think it's job dependent, definitely, but it was something that, like, I wasn't expecting at all.
right. Yeah, well, I mean, the burnout comes in a lot of forms. I think it's just, obviously culture, but the amount you put yourself through. If you can control it, then that's great. Often you can't. Sometimes people just have to work the job. And what's the old sayings? I don't. Sometimes I like what I do. Sometimes I just have to do it.
Mhm.
I think that comes up a lot with a lot of the work we do sometimes. Even now, even though I'm very senior and I do a lot of interesting things, there's some jobs that I still have to do. It's like, ugh, drudgery. You got to do it anyway because it's part of the gig, but
Yeah.
it doesn't make it easy.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we've only got a few minutes left. We had some
Sure.
technical difficulties getting on to the podcast earlier today. What are some of the last, thoughts that you would like to leave us with, and then, tell people where they can buy your book? I think I've got a lot of episodes that I haven't put out yet. Like I've been recording a ton in the past couple
No
weeks, and
worries.
my co-hosts have been more present the last few weeks, so I haven't gotten as many episodes out as usual. So I think I'll hold the episode until after your book is released. So hopefully, like,
Okay.
people won't forget, between
Yeah.
now and the 2nd of December to go buy the thing. So yeah, give us your last thoughts and then where they'll be able to buy the book.
Yeah. Well, so again, it's the 10 immutable laws of being a specialist, but it applies to anybody who's an application engineer, subject matter expert trying to help sell or serve people. And it's been a journey. I think I wrote it in a certain way where it's accessible to everybody, even though I'm also a researcher. I didn't kind of crush it with all the academic stuff. It's actually real. The Where you can find it is at my website, waywardleaders.com, or you can search my name, Carly Tolbert, on Amazon. It's already out on Amazon right now. I
Oh,
pre-released it.
gotcha.
Totally
Okay.
okay.
I thought you said it wasn't coming out until the
Well, the
2nd. So
official release is December 1st, but
I
it's
gotcha.
totally okay. I've already sold like a couple hundred copies, um, which is good. I mean, it's technically my third book. The first book was a math book, and then the second book was my dissertation. This is kind of the culmination of some real stuff I think is going to gain a little traction. It's never going to be as sexy as some other types of books and research, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think for people in that kind of line of work and distribution, doing technical sales, there's a lot of people that do it. I think it's a kind of a good read regardless of what industry you're in, if you have to be relied on for your expertise.
That's cool, man. They say that your 3rd book is the one that starts to sell, that it takes 3 books in order to, get through it.
Well,
Are you gonna do an audiobook?
I don't know. I haven't decided. The thing is, a lot of people are coming out with books now because AI is so prevalent. And been published like 20 times academically. The problem is that AI stuff's going to catch up with everybody at some point. I'm
Yep.
very thankful that I wrote this the old-fashioned way, and I used AI in a couple spots that I got stuck. Looking for data. As a research tool.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's fascinating to see how many books are coming out nowadays, right now, just because of the sheer force of like Chat
Yeah.
GPT, you know?
I saw this, picture on X yesterday. It's a picture of a physical newspaper, which apparently still exists,
Mhm.
and the article is titled "Auto Sales Rev Up in October." Car, van, pickup, and SUV sales surged 32% year on year. And then here's the last sentence of the article. If you want, I can create an even snappier front page style version with punchy one line stats and a bold infographic ready layout, a perfect maximum reader impact. Do you want me
Yep.
to do that? Which is clearly a chat
Mhm. Yep.
GPT thing. Anybody who's used chat GPT knows that it does that at the end of its stuff, which,
Oh, yeah.
I'm a writer as well, and, like, been working on a sci-fi book for a long time, and I've found that ChatGPT and Grok are great resources for,
They are.
like, "Hey, look, here's the premise, here's some of the tech," especially with technology, like,
Mhm.
I'm experimenting with, technology of the future, and a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
times, like, we have a problem seeing what things are gonna be doing in the future, so, like, I'm having it help me with ideas. That's not
Mhm.
writing for me because I think it sucks at writing and like I don't,
Well, it's
enjoy
getting better,
reading it.
but it's
It's
still
yeah,
challenging,
but
right?
it's not, especially for like fiction,
Yeah.
or nonfiction, I mean.
Mhm.
Fiction, excuse me. It's a little dry and it's a little academic and like I don't think it does what it's supposed to do. But anyways, I thought that was funny. I forgot to
Awesome.
take the, the end of the prompt out.
Awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate you having me on. This has been exciting. I haven't been on too many podcasts, and it's just wanting to talk to folks, different people, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime. Next time you write a new book, I'll send you my email address so you can,
Okay.
hit me up and say, hey, I've got a new book out. I'd like to come on and promote, and I'd, be more than happy to do that. So, last question. Is the book more designed for specialists or for like the managerial class who maybe needs to understand the specialist more, or is it for both?
It's for both, 100%. Yeah. So I think leadership really needs to get a clear understanding what the heck specialists do in the first place.
Yeah.
I think that's a critical thing, and that's kind of a byproduct of the book.
Yep.
Wasn't the original intention, but it's huge.
Yep. And I think that a lot of times they have a vision for the way things ought to be in their business, which is
Yep.
respectable. Like, this is your business, it's your name, it's your money. Like, you should have a say in the way things run. You should have a say in the way that you want your business to be presented and for how people view it and for how people interact with it. But at the same time, like, you have to step back at some point and realize that the people, you know, in the field, the specialists, the bartenders, the linemen, like they're the ones that are actually, like the line job that I worked, like the boss was a lineman. So he got it. He was willing to
Mhm.
listen because he understood that. But like I said, the last bar that I worked in, the guy had zero experience. And it was one of these things where like he had a vision, and a lot of
Mhm.
times his vision was just wrong, and it was
Yep.
working to his detriment, and I think if he was one of the things that he always was a pain in the ass about was cups. Like, he had these glasses that he wanted to use, and in a high volume sports bar, like, you can only wash so many glasses so fast, and you can only get them into the freezer and get them chilled as
Yep.
fast. There's entropy's a real thing.
Yep.
It's hard to, like, actually make this stuff happen some of the time, and, like, he would just not budge on plastic cups, and it was like, "Hey, look, man, not every day of the year because most of the time we can keep up on glasses, but if we have a big football game going, if we have a big party going, we have to go to plastic cups." Like, there's just no way around it, and what you're
Mhm.
doing by keeping to this glasses thing is, A, you're hurting the customer because the glass is gonna be warm when I pour the beer into it or when I make the drink into it, so, like, that screws them over, and B, like, you're slowing down the amount of drinks that I can make. If you are allowing us to do plastic a couple of days a year, like, I'm going to sell 20% more drinks because I'm able to make them faster. And finally, at some point, the general manager was just like, "You know what? Screw him. I own a portion of this company too, and we're just gonna do this." And he can flip out all he wants, but it's just how it's gonna be. And,
Right.
I think that it's important that people like that have have a difficult time working with people and have a difficult time like off-sourcing their, responsibility and off-sourcing their ability to make money, like, need to step back and realize that I hired you for a reason. I hired you for your expertise. I hired you because I believe that you can add value to my company. And if I'm not going to listen to your opinion, then why would I hire you in the first place?
Right.
Like, if you're
Right.
unwilling to listen to your experts, like, there's no reason to have them on the job. Start a different
Right.
company where you're hands-on and you're doing everything.
Right. Well, awesome.
Sounds good, man. Well, it was a pleasure again, and I'll send you out my email so we can do this again next time you got a book coming out.
All right, man.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Take it easy. Thank you.
See ya.